Christian parenting.
Welcome to the Living Wholehearted Podcast. We are Jeff and Terra Mattsons, a husband and wife team who is shrinking the integrity gap in our own lives and helping others do the same. I'm a leadership and organizational development coach, and Terra is a licensed marriage and family therapist.
We believe that if you have a following, you are a leader, and how you lead matters. Whether you are leading in the home, work, or community, we are bringing you biblical, clinical, and relational wisdom to help you in every relationship that matters most to you. None of us do this perfectly, but we are leaning into the reality of our humanity and profound wisdom of grace.
Welcome back to the Living Wholehearted Podcast. I'm Jeff, it's my wife Terra, and we're picking up where we left off. We've been talking about the Core Values Index. If you didn't catch the first part here, highly recommend you do that. You can also go back to the very beginning of when we started our podcast. I mean, we're now long past 100 plus episodes, but at the very beginning, I think episodes 2 through 5, we did a 4-part series on the CVI, and that will help. So we're not going into deep foundations here, but today in this recording, we're going to be addressing how the instrument, the Core Values Index, the CVI, helps us understand how we get into conflict and what to do about it.
And how to get out of it.
Yeah, how to get out of it, right? Even how to prevent it, which, if I could tell you this, if I could say that, look, I found sort of some magic fairy dust here that will guarantee that you can do conflict better. You can have less conflict in your life. And when you find yourself in conflict, you can get out of it better and faster. Would you take it? Would you believe it? And the reality is that that's a big statement to make. But after now 12 years of mining the gold in this instrument and applying it everywhere, it is, and with thousands of people over these years of working in different capacities, we've found that to be true. And it doesn't solve conflict in terms of you're not going to have it anymore.
Conflict's a part of life.
It's part of life. Mm-hmm. And actually part of the process here too is embracing that conflict is the pathway actually to creating greater intimacy in relationships. It's a healthy thing. It's not something to run from or hide from or avoid, and to think of it always as a negative. Now, some conflict is going to always be a negative, right? Like abuse, never good, never good.
That's a different kind of conflict.
A different kind of conflict. What we're talking about here is the stuff that happens when a person's wiring is impacting another's, and another is impacting theirs. It's actually thinking about it very intelligently. And this frame of the CVI lets us see it out here in front of us, and what might be happening between our wirings contributing to conflict inside of us, and when that starts coming out onto others, or vice versa.
I love that you use the word intelligently. I can't even say it. Intelligently. Can we redo that?
Intelligently. Yeah.
Words can get hard for me sometimes.
Sure.
But the idea that it really is helping us go into conflict and come out when really conflict is stirred up because our bodies have been hijacked and we've lost our frontal lobe, our cognitive part of our brain, because all of our blood just left our frontal lobe, went down to our fight, flight, or freeze part, the lower half of our brain.
The amygdala.
And it's saying you are in danger. And that's because it's been mapped out throughout your life. Your body is picking up on all of these cues. They don't make sense. And so when you've taken time to understand what are your cues, what are your triggers, what makes your body get hijacked where you're going, I'm ready to fight, flight, or freeze, and how you actually battle is based on your wiring. Mm-hmm. So there's some really beautiful outcomes when you can better understand the way you do conflict, why you do conflict. And really it calls us to maturity, which we're really growing in ourselves as husband and wife and business owners and parents. The reality is
never short on tests.
Never short. I mean, I think we just had a conflict last night, but we won't talk too much about that one because it's kind of fresh.
I forgive you.
But the idea of the fact that conflict, there's just never a shortage of it. So it gives us a roadmap. the CVI, Core Values Index, gives us a roadmap to reflect, and it calls us to maturity. Yep. Instead of doing the blame game, it says, I'm going to point the finger back at me and say, what happened for me? And all I can do is maybe navigate that better, maybe own those pieces. And when given a chance to be able to actually articulate, here's what happened for me, so we can move forward in a different path going forward. So all 4 core values have specific conflict strategies.
Yeah. So I'll talk about the builder and merchant, because I talked about that last time. Okay. And then you talk about innovator and banker, sure, the conflict side. So, for all the beautiful strengths of the core values, there's that shadow side, just like every other tool has, and this is where the creator of the tool, CVI, Lynn Taylor, lowers the barrier of entry for people. People expect 4 quadrants, 4 colors, a positive side and a negative side. Mm-hmm. Well, more accurately with this instrument, it nails why the negative, where it comes from, actually. Mm-hmm. So here's what, in a big picture perspective, conflict from the core values index perspective comes from when a core value is not being honored. And you can only be in one core value at a time, right? And a person has some of all 4 of the values, mm-hmm, and the numbers, again, as a reminder, 1 to 36. The higher the number, the more a person relates to that value. The lower the number, the less they do. Mm. And long story short about conflict is that as an example in the builder, when builders are all about using their energy to make a positive difference for others, they have a real internal belief of I know what to do or I will know what to do. When someone challenges that in a way that does not feel honoring, here's a perfect example. And Terra, you left it off in terms of the innovator, classic battle between you and I and your innovator and my builder. When you would say to me and approach me, hey, what are you doing? And I was already on something that I was excited about, building the gazebo, for example. And if you were to come down and just say, hey, what in the world are you doing? Immediately in my body, you feel anxiety. And anxiety is the feeling that all 4 values have immediately when their value is not being honored, whether that's really happening or perceived. And anxiety is like, for us as believers in our biblical worldview, it's really kind of the Holy Spirit. It's saying a warning system. But for those that don't have a biblical worldview, they still feel the anxiety because God created everybody. Yeah. And the anxiety is in the body saying, hey, you're about ready to go get your needs met in an unhealthy way. Yeah.
Before you continue, mm-hmm, can I just extend on that? I'm going to add an innovator B to that, where my mind went, and just recognizing that when we use the word anxiety, people often think of an anxiety disorder, a problem. And I think you're speaking to the human emotion anxiety, mm-hmm, that's designed as a warning system. And we should have anxiety at different parts as to say something's going to happen.
It's meant to protect us.
It's also the book, The Gift of Fear. It helps us understand that those are emotions that are actually going to protect us or get us moving in a direction. So anxiety is that warning system. If we're thinking anxiety disorder or persistent ongoing anxiety, that's more likely related to ongoing abuse and trauma, a different kind of conflict that's happened that's unresolved. And so I just wanted to clarify that that's the kind of the normal, every human has it. Yeah. And so we don't have to all of a sudden get medication for this, right, though good in certain situations. This one is more of this scenario, this relationship, something's going on for us.
Something's not right here.
My body is telling me through a warning system.
Yeah, that's really a good point, honey. Yeah, so in the builder space, the anxiety is there. And if a builder, both male or female, whoever's the builder, mm-hmm, that's the beautiful thing about the tool we said in the first part here last mm-hmm week was that it transcends age and gender and culture, the whole bit. Yeah. If the builder feels anxiety and they ask themselves the question, they're attuned to that. Mm-hmm. Why am I feeling that? Mm-hmm. That's really a great place to begin to ask and to consider in terms of helping them to regulate the impulse, to let the anxiety go from a healthy warning space to start entertaining what comes next, which is a fear. And the fear for the builder, which is associated here in the pathway in fear that leads to conflict strategy mm-hmm of intimidation for the builder, the fear is going to challenge their internal questioning of themselves. Do I have the ability to get this done? And this is all happening inside their own minds within a matter of seconds. Or maybe I don't know what to do. Maybe I won't be able to get this done, right? From a competency standpoint, it's challenging the action and results, the power and faith that the builder has inside of them, God-given, beautiful in its right expression. And that if a builder gets to that fear space, they do not like that vulnerable feeling, and
Nobody
they will
does.
not show that, and they will use intimidation to get their needs met of being perceived as the powerful one, the person that knows what to do and has the confidence. They're going to try to get those needs met now in an unhealthy way. And intimidation is going to take the to-the-point communication style of the builder, which is not bad in its pure form. Now it's to the point to hurt you and to intimidate you and to get you out of their way so they can get back to the action and results that they wanted to get done. That's wrong motive, wrong method for a builder. And that's what conflict looks like for them.
Yeah, and for those of you listening, there are, because of our different amounts, the number, the variation of our core values, a 7 builder like myself might be even more intimidated by a 21 builder like Jeff, just by him being in the room.
Yeah.
There's a sense of confidence. And so when he's direct, because he's on that edge of intimidation versus being power and faith in the room, it can be even scarier for those with lower core values. And that's true of every, a higher innovator with lower innovators, a higher merchant with lower merchants. There's just a misunderstanding oftentimes, but there is also just this gap between how we see the world and experience the world. And so that has been something in our relationship that Jeff holds carefully. And we have to go back to remember that, like, that's just a part of my wiring. Does it mean that I'm scared of him? Absolutely not. I'm not scared of you at all. But it does mean that sometimes I'm going to step back when it goes into intimidation versus a builder who's also 21, 22, 23, has no problems coming back in with intimidation themselves, right? And so we would fight that differently.
Yeah, 2 builders have it looks different, but there's not they're both using intimidation at that point, right?
And it can look pretty ugly, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, wait. So merchant.
Yeah. So the merchant, their values are love and truth. Love, the definition, nurturing of core values in self and in others. They're the people, and their truth is their set of convictions that they have developed over their whole life. They feel everything, how people should be treated, what's right. Everything filters from merchants down to people and relationships.
Year again. We are well into summer, and for our kids, that means soaking in the sun and drinking lemonade without a worry in the world, except maybe that required summer reading. But as parents, it means the school year is right around the corner, and that can bring a wave of emotions. Whether you're excited and eager or stressed and anxious about what the upcoming school year will entail for your kids, we have a resource that will guide you through all the highs and lows of the next school year. The Christian Parenting 2022-2023 Prayer Journal is now available. It's a weekly guide to help you pray specifically over your kids. This journal draws from the songs, poems, and expressions of faith found in the 150 chapters of Psalms. The messages found in those chapters are the perfect guide for a prayerful heart. Visit cpguide.org to request your 2022-2023 Prayer Journal, Key Psalms to Pray Over Your Kids. Again, that's cpgives.org.
So when someone is challenging their nurturing, their love or their truth, and what does that look like? It's kind of like a merchant that would, try to do something kind for somebody, and the person's response would be like, "What are you doing?" Or why did you do that? And the merchant inside immediately feels that sense of anxiety that Terra was talking about, which is, something's wrong here. Something didn't happen here. Something's going on, and be in kind of a warning system that we need to think about this and try to understand it better. And rather than going to the fear space for the merchant, which is vulnerable and not a good feeling for them, they don't want to sit in a space where they're questioning whether or not their own values of loving people well and the truth that the convictions that they hold and have had about people are true or not. That's a very vulnerable and scary place for merchants. So if they get to the fear of that, they will use manipulation to somehow get out of that feeling as quick as possible without getting caught. And manipulation, unlike the builder's intimidation, that doesn't have a spectrum. It's kind of fast and heavy and intense and intimidating. Merchants have a lot of creativity for people because they're really great with that, right? That's their contributions. One of their contributions is the vision for people. But in the dark side, the manipulation can get very creative as well. It might look like a form of a withdrawal of love and of truth. I'm gonna just try to change the subject here. I'm gonna try to make myself feel better and get us to do something different so I can get away from that feeling.
Crack a joke.
Maybe more the subtle end of a manipulative strategy. Get my needs met of you, getting you back to seeing me as a loving person, as the person that's really knows what they stand for and has sound convictions about people. Get you back there. That's kind of the merchant's goal in manipulation. Now, they don't want to get caught doing that or being perceived as manipulating. That's kind of it's one of the worst words for merchants is manipulation, right?
Yeah.
Because that's so opposite of who they are, want to be, and the best of who they are.
True.
But it can also be pretty dark. If the violation is egregious, a merchant might actually think to themselves, you know what, I'm going to make you feel the way you made me feel.
So how it makes sense to me as a merchant, but also coaching lots of merchants and walking through this process is peeling apart motivation. It's all about motivation. And not everybody in the world's going to perceive, they don't know your motivation. So it could come across or look manipulative. So you really have to know, are you speaking truth and love? Or are you dropping truth and just being loving, but not giving the full truth? Or are you giving truth? You can't handle the truth. And now you're using your words instead of to encourage, but to poke and to harm, and you've dropped love. And a merchant knows. So that's where it gets more real. It's less, I don't like the word manipulation, and yet that's what it is using emotion to get what you want instead of honoring the core values of yourself and the others. So boundaries are really important for merchants. They're important for all core values, but boundaries are really important as merchants start to think about, how do I pull apart when's my pure motive of loving you and being kind and truthful, and when am I shifting into that manipulative, that I'm just doing things to keep the relationship intact or to keep your perception of me intact.
Yeah. Are you hearing already, just again, in the strengths of this and from the first recording, we're talking about how all four of these values, people that are first merchants, they have the other three values too. First builders, first bankers, first innovators, how they're equally valuable. I mean, there's not one that's more important than the other. And it's not to say that only merchants love people. No, we already talked about how merchants and bankers really care for people. And we didn't say that bank builders and innovators don't care for people. No, they do. But bankers and merchants really care for people. And it's kind of like to say the flip it, right? The merchants and bankers, that they don't get stuff done. No, they don't come up with creative ideas. No, we're not saying that. We're saying that builders and innovators really care about getting things done or innovating and finding the best solutions the first time. It's kind of an emphasis, right?
Or ease. People. What comes easier? Yeah. It doesn't mean you can't do it. It just comes with ease. So the higher number, the easier it is for you.
That's right.
Both on the conflict side and the best of your contributions. And so anything else about the merchant before I move to innovator?
No,
in terms of conflict strategy?
No.
Okay. So the innovator will shift and use that wisdom or compassion will shift into an interrogative posture, which is either towards the person. So I might be interrogative towards myself, and I'm thinking all these questions and questioning myself, my motives. What could I have done better? Kind of the blaming and belittling towards me, or that'll move towards those that are in my way of the wisest right direction and the belittling. So when Jeff was coming in with that question, my pattern early on in our marriage was, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? And it comes across so belittling, but I genuinely wanted to know why. I might have already been judgmental of going, I don't think that's the right way yet. Yeah. But I was feeling left out because I didn't get to be a part of the creating the best route, because the builders move faster than the innovators. And so we didn't know that back then, but now I understand that when an innovator, their wisdom hasn't been honored or asked, or it's been even violated, right? You've offered your wisdom and somebody does something totally a different direction, that can create anxiety for an innovator. Or compassion is that time to be curious and to collect all the data. If that time gets squeezed and decisions and action gets faster and we're put on a timetable, then anxiety can go up. So both of those can get dishonored in lots of different ways throughout the day, not even intentionally, right? By all the other core values, and anxiety starts to go up, and we start to feel like maybe I'm gonna look like a fool. That's the greatest fear of an innovator, is I'm gonna make a foolish decision. You're gonna make a foolish decision. And it's less about looking like a fool and more about all of the harm that can happen from what we think could be a foolish decision. Well, a healthier innovator, just gonna put this out there, can offer our wisdom with ease, and then let you decide if you want to take that wisdom or not, because we're not the only wisdom in the room. And that's really the posture of an innovator, to stay out of that interrogative place. Because that interrogator, it can be, like I said, inwardly, I could be thinking, that's an idiotic decision you're making there. Or it could be outward, could even be just contempt on the face, right? There's that look of like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard or said. We can do that without even knowing we're doing that as innovators. I always laugh because innovators can look very blank. They kind of look dumb sometimes because if they're in innovator posture in that core values, they're listening and observing, and doesn't always look like they're engaging you because they're thinking
they're in
at
their
the
head.
same time as you're talking. And it's really hard for innovators to turn that off.
Yeah.
And so we have to be very careful to stay in the best of who we are. And sometimes to take a break from innovating and to move to other core values, just to give it a breather.
Would you say it's hard sometimes as an innovator to stay present with people because of the challenges? The higher the number of innovator you are, the more things you could think of at the same time. And
the multitasking and the best of an innovator is when we pull away and we're by ourselves and we have time to go deep and to assess so we can solve the problems. And so doing that when everyone's talking at us, or there's other expectations, or people are moving fast, anxiety goes up for an innovator. And it's either time to change to a different core value. Oh, okay, I'm not going to solve a problem. I'm just going to be with people right now. Or, we're in builder right now. We're going to be just actions and results. It's easier to shift or to speak up and to say, hey, I need more time, or I need to think about that a little longer, or can I have a little bit of space and pull away, and then I'll come back to you with some of my ideas and options.
Yeah. Okay. So on the banker side of things.
Oh, I forgot about banker.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, bankers.
And then we're going to talk about what we do about our origins of conflict, and understanding where it comes from is the first step, right? So where does conflict come from for bankers? So they value knowledge, how and why of things, and justice. To remain inquisitive, I should say that the justice is information is available to all. Yep. And used appropriately. They're the fairness people. So when conflict emerges for a banker, it's usually because their knowledge or justice is not being honored, right? Somebody is doing something that's not fair, right? Immediately a banker's like anxiety, they would feel that something's not right here. And they are most attuned to fairness in the core values community. And this is important. The rest of us can benefit from some of this, right? As we attune to and want to, would value fairness. Go to bankers. They're going to feel it. They know they'll tell you what is right and fair on anything that's presented to them. And they're really good at that. Okay, so violation of knowledge, the how and why of things. So if information is going to be used inappropriately and in a way that's not true or accurate, they are the ones that are holders of information in terms of accuracy and detailed. By the way, that translates into, when they say, hey, the meeting's going to start at 10 o'clock, they're there early before 10 because that's on time. And information available to all used appropriately. And when other people roll in at 10:05, that's hard for a banker. Anxiety is showing up for bankers because they're like, and I carved out time to be here on time. How come you can't? It's just harder, right? When anxiety is given space and not as a warning system and responded to in a way that we're going to talk about in a moment by making a key shift to another core value, when that is allowed to get to a fear space, the fear space is that vulnerable space that the banker doesn't like to feel, which is, gosh, do I have my facts right? Did I do the research? I thought I did. I don't know that I do. And now in the fear moment, if it gets there, the banker will find some form of aloof judgment. Aloof judgment will always be to a banker some form of withdrawal, a withdrawal of knowledge. You didn't want to hear what I had to say. You're not handling the facts appropriately. I mean, I put in effort to give you these. I researched this, and now you're just treating it like garbage or dismissive. I'm not going to share those with you anymore, or I'm just going to get quiet. People don't want to hear in this group meeting. I tried to contribute, but no one, people think of me as a negative person because I'm bringing up stuff that needs to be improved.
Yeah.
What's wrong with that? That actually is, I'm trying to help here. So now I'm just going to show up. I won't say anything. And that would be a form of aloof judgment. Now, if the violation is more egregious than that, let's just say that there's been a long history of little violations, or there's been one massive one that just happened. That can be a pretty extreme form of aloof judgment, where inside the banker's mind, again, in all cases, it's generally starting here and staying here. Judge and jury are out.
And you're saying here in
their head,
okay,
in a matter of seconds, that the facts are in, I have them, and you're guilty. And, if there's been an egregious violation, it could be the banker in their head and in their actions can be withdrawn so far that they're like, never again. I'm not talking to you again. I'm not. And worse than that, when your plans fail because I tried to warn you, I'm going to be laughing. I'll be there to see it. And only if you come back to me and beg for forgiveness in detail, because that's where bankers see everything in their world is through detail. Will I maybe come out and offer more knowledge and connect with you again, but not until then. And I'm using exaggerated language here on purpose, right? But it can actually look like that in the darkest space for a banker. So for all 4 core values, for all the beautiful contributions that we're wired to give, conflict emerges when our values are not being honored. And the source and the origin of conflict, this actually makes it predictable. It's so helpful to know this. In my primary core values, merchant and builder, I know that likely it's one of those two. And you know that. And our kids know that. And so if I can learn to trace that better, I can do something called regulating. Now we want every person, every kid, every teen, every adult to learn how to regulate better. If we do that, we're less likely to go all in on conflict. We're able to pull back and we're able to help ourselves. If we can help ourselves, we might be in a place where we could help others. That's what the magic of this tool is. You can't control other people. You can only do that for you. Start with you, but you could actually be, if you stay in the best of who you are, you might be in a position to help somebody else who's in their conflict strategy all the way.
Yeah, so it shifts conflict from you violated me to, something happened that we probably misunderstood each other or didn't, our wirings were speaking different languages, and we can easily hurt one another without intending. And so if I can step back and go, what was violated? Was it my love? Was it the truth? I feel like the truth's not being said, or wisdom. My wisdom wasn't heard. I wasn't asked. So I gave the example of early marriage where we dreamed we were merchanting together, the idea of a gazebo on our property. And then all of a sudden Jeff moves to action in his builder, and I still thought we were talking about it.
Priced options.
Yeah.
We have,
so I take it personal, right? Like, he doesn't love me, right? That's what we do, women. We go, he doesn't love me, doesn't care about my opinion, my voice doesn't matter. I'm following this track of really awful lies. When the reality was, he just didn't know that I cared enough to have to think about more options. Fast forward how many more years, when I'm feeling that anxiety of Jeff moving faster, I can now say, hey, my innovator needs a little bit more time. I really want to make sure that I've considered some options. And Jeff, because he wants to honor me and prevent some conflicts, he can say, well, how much time do you need? And I will say, we're being very mature in these moments. It doesn't always happen this way. But then I can say, hey, give me another day. Or in some cases, I might need a week. And Jeff's like, I don't know why you need a week. This could be done now. But for me, I need more time. So I'll say, give me a week. I really want to look at the options. And then he come back and I give him options. And then I say to him in his builder, who can decide and do, say, which options do you want? And Jeff says, you know what? I think this one's going to be the best. And I've learned to trust that instinctual, confident faith. And then instead of us having to redo a decision later on or have a lot of conflict, we've now done some work on the front end. And that came out of just listening to that anxiety that was coming up, of me saying, slow down, we're moving a little too fast. Or for a merchant, I can say, hey, I'm feeling like we haven't had a lot of play and a lot of talk time because we've been in builder and innovator. I'm over here doing my innovator. You're doing your builder. I need some more talk time. My anxiety is going up and I'm starting to take things more personal, and we're not feeling like we know each other and we're appreciating each other, which is huge for merchants.
And for a banker, you might be this. It might be like if someone is moving too fast or just wants to sort of freestyle something. So a builder tendency, maybe
no planning.
A merchant tendency. Bankers feel anxiety about this, and they can use their voice to say, you know what? I'm feeling like we might need to consult to see and to think and to look, has this been done before? Is there something that could guide us based on facts and others who have done something? And can we learn from others, and get counsel and get data that might just help us? And I kind of need that before I could be all in on this or be excited about it, right? That's a way that bankers are regulating and helping be honest about what they're feeling. And how about
and the builder
or a merchant space? What do they need? Did we do builder?
Oh, we already did merchant. We're doing builder. We got lost because we're lower bankers. So hang with us. But we have to do the builder, and the builder in a more mature place when the anxiety is starting to rise. And you know this through your body. Your body starts to tell you, because your hands get sweaty, your heart starts beating, the intensity, and your body, it looks different for each person. For Jeff, his jaw starts to clench and his hands start to move. And for me, I feel it in my chest. My chest starts to get heavier. I start to talk faster. Those are all the things that you start to cue in, and I get sharper with my tone, the more anxiety that I have in my body. So there's this
the builder
awareness. So the builder, bear with us, guys. We're going to get there. The builder needs to just be able to step back and to say, these people, if I want to use power and faith, and not bulldoze and be the bully, and I want to bring them along and empower, then I need to check in and honor the people in this getting the project done. Or you can just use your word and say, I'm in builder mode right now. I need to get these things off my list, and then I'll be ready to talk with you, play with you, innovate with you, whatever it is. So it's either or. It's either slow down or use your words and say, I need to get these projects done, and then I'll be with you.
Yeah. Builders can say too, hey, in a meeting with a whole bunch of, let's say, merchant innovators where ideas are flowing and there's just a high level of talking and it's a higher pitch. Builders can say, I appreciate the value of talking and having a good time. I am also feeling inside of me a desire, like, what does this translate into how we're going to actually use what's happening here and get something done, right? And if you're approaching it that way, that's a good use, right motive, right method for a builder to regulate their impulse and not go to intimidation. Like, enough talk, everybody.
Yes. Or body language.
We're done here. We've spent 45 minutes talking and you all have been having a great time. We got nothing done. I mean, right? You can see how builders would have a tendency to flow that way. And they can regulate that, right? So
and
conflict, predictable, and when we know where it comes from, why it comes from there, then we can do something about it. What is the something that we really need to do? We need to shift to other values sometimes that we have to get some perspective on what's going on in the value that's in conflict. You cannot solve your conflicts from the value that you are in conflict in. You have got to shift. And so if you have
your anxiety's too high there.
Yeah, if you have an accessible value when I say that, I say above an 11 would be this would be a value that you have, had some familiarity with based on the number above 11. 11 and below, you're not going to really do a good job solving any conflict by shifting to that value, because it's not a value you really value. It's not something that you really know and are flow in, or that's easy for you, right? So you got to go to a different value that you have accessible to you. And in your mind, there's 4 questions associated with all 4 values. The question is, if you're shifting to merchant to solve a problem that originated in a value other than merchant, is, hey, what's the most loving thing needed right now? And that's a part of you that God designed to help you in that moment. Stay in a place of love and whatever value it is that you have that's in conflict, to then go back with the answer to that question and do that. And it should calm, reduce blood leaving the frontal lobe, going to the amygdala, and actually keep it there, right? If you need to shift to another value and the value is builder, the question there is, so you're not in conflict in builder, you're in conflict in one of the other three values. The question is, what action can I take right now? What can I do to make a positive difference? And that might be the help you, inside of you, take a step to help resolve the conflict in one of the other three values that you're stuck in, and to feel more whole and authentic and avoid going to that. Now, what are the other two questions? An innovator and a banker.
Innovator is what would wisdom say? There's this slowing down and, the wise sage kind of piece. But if you have an innovator in you, or you need to go to an innovator, but what would wisdom say? And often it is slow down, consider the context, the possible, what we say, other B's. There's lots of B's here. Options. And then the banker would say, what is really true? What are the facts? And that's the question I have to ask myself with such a high merchant innovator. It grounds the rest of the core values in really down to the wire. What did the email actually say? Not what I feel it said, not what I think contextually it should say. What did it actually say? And so getting back into reality for the banker question is really helpful. So what are the facts? What is true? What do I know to be true? So those 4 questions can be profound. And we're not saying that you'll never be in conflict. But what we're saying is these are muscles like any other muscle that we start to learn. And I think in all the areas, whether we're working in marriage, parenting, org teams with leaders in their walk, people healing from lots of dysfunctional stuff all the way to just longing to have healthier systems and change the systems beneath them in a different trajectory. At the core, we always are asking people to slow down and to begin to own your own regulation process and to be more aware. I visualize it like us going through a museum, the museum in Tacoma with all the glass art.
The Cholula.
Yes.
Museum.
And I'm super clumsy naturally. And so I have to heighten my awareness if I'm going to go through a museum like that, because my hands will just fly in the air. And just as I'm talking, and I'll knock over something and create a big mess. So there's this awareness that has to happen for me to make it through a museum like that if I'm going to not cause massive damage. It's this awareness process that we're asking us to grow into and to say, keep in step with your true nature. Learn to honor all the other art in the room. Sorry if you're not following my analogy.
Very innovative.
and to make sure that you're not doing the damage. So let's just end with a builder bottom line statement. How do you want to end this conversation on conflict and CBI?
You got it. Here we go. So conflict is predictable using this tool, which is unbelievable. It comes from one of 4 places. Humans are very complex, but there's nuance in this. But to know that there's one of 4 core values are not being honored inside a person when conflict is coming out, and that it looks one of 4 ways. Yeah. Wow, you can learn to spot it in yourself and regulate before it goes all into conflict. Mm-hmm. Or you can, if you're in a good place, the other person's in conflict, you can see it in them, understand where it's probably coming from, maybe how you contributed to it. Mm-hmm. And help them out of it, or help them not go full on in. Now that is amazing. Conflict is predictable, and you can do something about it better than other things that you've maybe tried before. And isn't that worth it? We find that after 12 years of practicing these muscles that we got a long ways to go, but boy, we're still feeding on all of this because it really helps.
And it helps our clients. And so, I'm going to just say one more thing. Surprise, surprise, everyone. But I just want to make sure that you understand that our expectation is not that now you understand the CVI and are going to integrate and prevent conflict, have grace in this process. But we just wanted to pique your interest. Many of you have been around a while and you hear us talk about the core values. And so we just wanted to offer you a little bit of a deeper dive. Yeah. and maybe we've intrigued you and you want to learn more, go to livingwholehearted.com, and in the upper right-hand corner, click on Take the CVI. You can learn on your own, or you can invite us into the process. We've got a lot of different ways you can do that. But at the bottom line, just from this conversation here in this episode, I'm going to encourage you to just take one nugget and to move forward in your day, in your daily relationships, and see if you can notice the different wirings, the merchant, the banker, the builder, the innovator, either through communication style or their conflict. Or maybe you're going to take the nugget on regulating and recognizing that it's up to you to do some of the ownership here in the conflict, that you have more power than sometimes we feel like we have. So I know you landed the plane, but I picked it back up. One more concluding statement and then we'll end.
Yeah, this is just us trying to take the best tools that we can find so that we can have the most meaningful and significant relationships that we can at home, at work, and in the community. For us, we're passionate about blending and integrating biblical, clinical, and relational wisdom. So we found a tool 12 years ago. We're gonna continue to use it and mine it for all it's worth. We haven't found anything else that works more effectively than that as it relates to, of course, never taking the place of God, of the scriptures. It really works and complements those things. It brings those things to life through the frame of the CVI. So we would be excited to share more about it with you. We hope we whet your appetite today in that, and that you got a chance to see a little bit of our dynamic, how we actually use it. So until next time, be the leader that you would follow, and take some time to integrate this wisdom into your real life and watch the fruit.
This podcast is powered by Living Wholehearted, Courageous Girls, and the Christian Parenting Podcast Network. Thank you for joining us in this critical movement of shrinking our integrity gaps between what we preach and live.